A newborn chimpanzee can grip its mother's fur and hold on within hours of being born. A newborn foal stands up and walks within the first 30 minutes of life. A newborn wildebeest can run well enough to keep pace with a moving herd before the day is over. And then there is a human baby, completely helpless, cannot hold its own head up, cannot regulate its own body temperature, cannot find food, cannot move, cannot do almost anything required to survive even a single night without another human being providing everything. Human infants are, by a significant margin, the most physically helpless creatures born by any large mammal on Earth. And for the vast majority of human history, keeping them alive meant doing it without hospitals, without formula, without pediatricians, without any of the infrastructure that modern parents take for granted. And yet here you are, descended from a line of children who somehow made it. This is how ancient humans pulled that off. The helplessness of a human newborn is not an accident. It is the direct result of a collision between two things that evolution was trying to do at the same time. Over millions of years, the human brain was getting bigger, significantly bigger. The skull required to house that brain was getting larger. But at the same time, the human pelvis was being shaped by walking upright on two legs, a shape that narrowed the birth canal. The result is that human babies are effectively born too early. A human pregnancy that lasted long enough for the infant brain to reach the developmental level of a newborn chimpanzee would make birth physically impossible. So human babies arrive ahead of schedule, neurologically unfinished, dependent on external care to complete development that other primates handle inside the womb. Scientists call this secondary altriciality. It is the reason human childhood is so long, so vulnerable, and so expensive in terms of what it requires from the adults around it. And here is the thing that ancient humans figured out that almost every other species did not. You do not solve that problem with one parent. You solve it with a group. Anthropologists studying surviving hunter-gatherer populations have consistently documented a practice that appears to be as old as our species' alloparenting. The sharing of childcare duties across multiple adults in a group beyond the biological parents. In these communities, infants are passed between adults throughout the day. Older children carry younger ones. Women who are nursing feed infants that are not their own if a mother is ill or absent. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and older siblings all participate actively in keeping the youngest members of the group alive. This was not a cultural invention of a particular civilization. It appears across every studied hunter-gatherer society on every continent. It is, researchers argue, one of the defining features of how humans raise young and one of the primary reasons the species survived at all. Within that system, one role turns out to have been unexpectedly critical. In the 1990s, anthropologist Kristen Hawkes began studying the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last groups still living as our ancestors did. She noticed something that the data on child health and nutrition made unmistakably clear. Children whose maternal grandmothers were alive and present were significantly more likely to survive to adulthood than children whose grandmothers were absent. The grandmother effect, as it became known, was not subtle. It was substantial enough that Hawkes proposed it might explain something that had puzzled evolutionary biologists for a long time: why human females live so long after they stop reproducing. No other great ape has a significant post-reproductive lifespan. Humans do. And the evidence suggests that post-menopausal women contributed enough to the survival of grandchildren to make that extended lifespan worth preserving across generations of natural selection. Beyond the social structure, ancient humans used every practical resource available to keep infants alive through the most dangerous years. Breastfeeding continued for 2 to 3 years in most traditional populations, providing ongoing immunity, nutrition, and a contraceptive effect that spaced out pregnancies and gave each child more dedicated care. The first milk produced after birth, dense with antibodies, was the single most important immune protection a newborn received in a world without medicine. Infants were carried close to the body continuously, keeping their temperature regulated and protecting them from predators. The campfire that kept the group warm at night was the same fire that kept infants from dying of cold exposure in environments where temperatures dropped sharply after dark. When solid food eventually replaced milk, adults pre-chewed it. Archaeological analysis of ancient dental remains has found wear patterns consistent with extensive pre-chewing across populations, and ethnographic records confirm this was a universal practice in traditional societies, a crude but effective way of making fibrous and tough foods safe for children who had not yet developed the teeth or jaw strength to manage them independently. But perhaps the most revealing evidence of how ancient humans treated their children comes not from what they did to keep them alive, but from what they did when they could not. Archaeological sites across multiple continents have found the graves of young children buried with care, with grave goods, with evidence of deliberate and careful preparation. Infants who had no economic value to the group, no work they could contribute, nothing they could offer in return buried with the same attention given to adults. Beyond that, the fossil record contains several examples of individuals who survived to adolescence or adulthood with severe physical disabilities that would have required years of sustained care and feeding from others. These individuals could not have survived without the deliberate choice of a group to support them through conditions that provided no practical benefit. Ancient humans kept their children alive the same way they survived everything else. Not alone. Together with grandmothers and alloparents and group fires and shared milk and pre-chewed food and careful hands and deliberate graves. The infrastructure was different. The instinct underneath it was exactly what it still is.